There's a moment in life when something inside you finally breaks, not in a fragile way, but in a revealing way. A moment when you stop pretending you don't notice the disrespect. When you stop making excuses for someone who never showed up for you. When you stop giving chances to a person who never gave you certainty. It doesn't happen with shouting, or anger, or dramatic endings. It happens in silence. A heavy, cold, awakening silence that feels like you're opening your eyes after months of walking in the dark. You suddenly realize that you weren't being patient, you were being drained. You weren't understanding, you were being ignored. You weren't loving, you were abandoning yourself. And the most painful part is noticing how easily someone got used to receiving your effort, while giving back almost nothing. They treated your presence like a background noise, always there, always convenient, always guaranteed. They believed you would stay no matter what. They believed you would tolerate everything. They believed they would never lose you. But life has a way of flipping the script the moment you rediscover your worth. The first attitude that destabilizes someone who never truly valued you is emotional withdrawal with quiet certainty. You don't yell. You don't announce your distance. You don't threaten to leave. You simply stop offering what they never appreciated. You stop replying instantly. You stop carrying the entire emotional weight of the relationship. You stop being the one who fixes what the other one breaks. And because your absence is not filled with drama or noise, it becomes even more disturbing. People fear a storm, but they fear silence more, because silence has no argument to fight, no weakness to exploit, no explanation to twist. Your calm distance becomes a mirror they cannot escape. They start asking themselves questions they never thought they would. Why does their energy feel different? Why aren't they reacting like before? Why is it suddenly so hard to reach them? What they don't understand is simple. You are not punishing them. You are reclaiming yourself. And when you reclaim yourself, you reclaim their power too. The second attitude that hits hard is raising the standard of who gets access to your emotional energy. For a long time, you accepted breadcrumbs. You tried to spark conversations they wouldn't keep. You checked on someone who never checked on you. You forgave inconsistency because you hoped it would change. But once you decide to protect your energy, the dynamic shifts completely. You no longer respond to messages that come with no intention. You no longer entertain someone's sudden curiosity when they ignored you yesterday. You no longer invest in connections that only survive if you are the one keeping them alive. This selectiveness exposes something the other person didn't want to see. The relationship only existed because you made it exist. When they reach out now, expecting the old version of you, the eager one, the emotional one, the available one, they are met with a calm, distant, measured response. Or no response at all. And that absence of attention hits harder than any confrontation. Because losing someone's anger isn't scary. Losing someone's interest is. This is where regret begins, quietly, almost invisibly. They realize they never considered the possibility that you could evolve beyond them. That you could grow out of the connection. That you could stop needing what they never gave. And that revelation comes with a heavy truth. Your worth was never tied to how they treated you. It was tied to how long you allowed yourself to accept it. These first two attitudes mark the beginning of a transformation they cannot control, reverse, or influence. You are not trying to make them regret anything. You are simply becoming someone who no longer tolerates the version of yourself that tolerated them. And that, more than anything, is what shakes their world. The third attitude that leaves a deep mark on someone who never valued you is shifting from explanation to action. There was a time when you would waste breath trying to make them understand how their behavior hurt you. You would over-explain, over-justify, over-apologize, hoping they would finally get it. But people who refuse to see you will never open their eyes just because you beg them to. So instead of talking, you start moving. Instead of asking for clarity, you create your own. Instead of giving warnings, you make decisions. This shift is terrifying for someone who relied on your emotional transparency. They were used to knowing your every feeling, every doubt, every fear. They expected you to narrate your pain so they could decide whether or not it mattered. But now, you say nothing. Not in bitterness, but in evolution. You stop announcing your boundaries. Because boundaries only matter when you enforce them, not when you explain them. The absence of explanation becomes your new strength. And what they don't understand, they cannot manipulate. You no longer ask, "Why did you do that?" You no longer ask, "Do you still care?" You no longer ask, "Are we okay?" You simply adjust. You simply move. You simply leave behind what hurts. And this unannounced shift breaks the psychological pattern that gave them comfort. They can't prepare for your decisions. They can't predict your reactions. They can't rely on your vulnerability to keep you in place. They begin to feel the instability they once created in you. Only now they are the ones caught in the uncertainty. People fear losing control more than they fear losing a person. So when your silence removes their control, they feel the fear you once felt. This fear grows into regret, because they finally realize that your explanations were not weakness, they were affection. And affection, once withdrawn, almost never returns. The fourth attitude that shakes them even deeper is investing heavily in your personal evolution. Growth is one of the most powerful forms of revenge, especially when it's quiet. You begin focusing on yourself in a way you hadn't done in years. Not to prove a point, not to get noticed, not to show off, but because you finally remember what it feels like to choose yourself. You start improving your habits. You start expanding your goals. You start rebuilding your mind. You start feeding your spirit with discipline instead of desperation. Your energy changes. Your posture changes. Your presence changes. Your silence changes. You look stable. You sound confident. You feel grounded. And nothing disturbs someone who took you for granted more than witnessing you grow without them. Because they assumed you needed them. They assumed you depended on their approval. They assumed you would always be the same version of yourself they were comfortable neglecting. But suddenly, without warning, you are becoming someone else. Someone stronger. Someone wiser. Someone harder to access. Your evolution forces them to confront something uncomfortable. They had front row seats to your loyalty, and still didn't value it. And now that you are rising, they know they won't get another chance to stand beside you. Growth creates distance, sometimes emotional, sometimes spiritual, sometimes physical. But always inevitable. And as you grow, they shrink in comparison. Not because you are superior, but because they stayed stagnant while you rebuilt yourself from the inside out. Your improvement becomes a reminder of their lack of effort. Your discipline becomes a reminder of their inconsistency. Your glow becomes a reminder of everything they dimmed in you. Regret doesn't appear instantly. It appears in small flashes, like when they hear someone praise you, or when they see you smiling again, or when they realize you no longer look in their direction for validation. Each moment hits like a quiet punch to the chest. But the deepest regret appears when they understand this truth. You didn't change to impress them. You changed because you finally let go of the need to be understood by someone who never cared to understand you. These two attitudes, acting rather than explaining, and growing rather than chasing, destroy the illusion that they still hold a position in your life. They thought you were emotionally dependent on them. Now they realize they were emotionally dependent on the version of you who tolerated them. That version is gone. And they know it. And they feel it. And that feeling is the beginning of their downfall. The fifth attitude that shakes someone who never valued you is the ability to say no, without hesitation and without guilt. There was a time when your identity was built around being available, being the one who understood, the one who forgave, the one who adjusted, the one who accepted the bare minimum just to keep the connection alive. You didn't realize it then, but every yes you gave out of fear, every agreement you made against your own boundaries, every time you swallowed your discomfort, you were teaching them how little they needed to give in return. But something changes the moment you understand your worth. Your yes becomes rare. Your time becomes expensive. Your attention becomes precious. You stop bending to fit into other people's carelessness. You stop participating in conversations that leave you drained. You stop giving favors to people who only show up when they need something. And when someone who once took advantage of your softness approaches you with the same entitlement as before, they are met with a simple, firm, unapologetic. No. This shocks them. It rattles them. It destabilizes them. Because they were never afraid of losing your love. They were only afraid of losing your compliance. Your newfound boundaries feel like a threat to their comfort. But to you, they feel like reclaiming oxygen after years of suffocating. A person who never valued you will always interpret your boundaries as hostility, because they only experienced you without them. They believed your kindness was infinite. They believed your patience was unconditional. They believed you were incapable of walking away from the people you cared about. Now they see the truth. Your kindness had nothing to do with weakness. It was a choice. And choices can change. The sixth attitude that leaves an even deeper mark is showing kindness, but keeping distance. This one is subtle. It's refined. It's mature. And it is far more unsettling than anger. You don't shut them out with hatred. You don't slam doors. You don't insult, punish, or seek revenge. Instead, you offer polite nods, small gestures of respect, brief acknowledgments. You remain calm, stable, emotionally neutral. But the access they once had to your inner world, your heart, your vulnerability, your depth, is gone. This gentle distance is powerful because it removes something they never thought they would lose: intimacy. People expect anger when they mistreat you. They expect coldness. They expect conflicts and emotional explosions. But when you give them none of that, when you remain composed, civil, and balanced, they realize the damage they cause goes deeper than arguments. You didn't distance yourself because you were offended. You distanced yourself because you outgrew the version of yourself that tolerated disrespect. That realization lingers in their mind. It haunts them quietly. It whispers to them at night. Because kindness without closeness is the ultimate signal that you have moved on. Not bitterly. Not dramatically. But with a type of quiet strength that cannot be reversed. They feel the gap between you growing wider each time you interact. And that gap becomes the consequence of every moment they dismissed your feelings, every time they failed to show up, every time they believed you would remain no matter how little they offered. Nothing awakens regret like losing access to someone who still treats you with respect. It makes them question everything. Their own behavior. Their own choices. Their own blindness. It forces them to confront the truth. You were never the problem. Their inability to appreciate you was. Your polite distance becomes a mirror reflecting back their lack of effort. And in that reflection, they see the version of you they can no longer reach. These two attitudes, firm boundaries and gentle distance, change the emotional balance between you. They strip away the comfort they used to feel around your availability. They reveal the cost of taking you for granted. And they force the other person to face the uncomfortable reality that losing your closeness is a consequence, not a reaction. And once they feel that distance, even the smallest interaction becomes a reminder that the version of you who once fought for them no longer exists. That is the moment regret isn't just born. It begins to grow. Slowly, quietly, and relentlessly. Before we continue, if this message is already hitting somewhere deep, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Now let's go back into the darkness where real transformation happens. The seventh attitude that disrupts someone who never valued you is mastering emotional non-reactivity. In the past, they could trigger you with a careless comment, a passive-aggressive joke, a sudden distance, or a moment of cold indifference. They knew exactly which buttons to press to make you crumble, explain yourself, chase, or beg for reassurance. You didn't realize it at the time, but your reactions fed their sense of control. Every emotional response of yours reaffirmed their place in your heart, even if they never earned it. But something shifts once you reclaim your power. Their words no longer sink into your skin. Their silence no longer disturbs your peace. Their inconsistency no longer destabilizes your world. You become grounded, centered, emotionally untouchable. They send a half-hearted message. You take your time. They drop a subtle insult. You don't flinch. They try to provoke you. You stay still, unmoved, unbothered. This new version of you terrifies them, because they can't decode you anymore. You're no longer predictable, reactive, or emotionally transparent. Your calmness is a wall they can't climb, a silence they can't interpret, a boundary they can't penetrate. Non-reactivity is not coldness. It's power. Power they no longer have over you. And this lack of reaction, this calm, stoic composure, becomes the first real consequence of their previous behavior. They realize that the emotional access they once enjoyed has been revoked. Their attempts to provoke you fall flat. Their efforts to pull you into old patterns fail. They can feel you slipping away, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. This is where regret begins to turn into fear. Fear of irrelevance. Fear of losing emotional influence. Fear of seeing you become someone untouchable. Because once a person can no longer affect your emotions, they no longer have a place in your heart. The eighth attitude that deepens this impact is celebrating your victories privately and proudly. There was a time when every accomplishment you reached felt empty unless it was acknowledged by someone who never cared. You sent updates, screenshots, stories, hoping they would finally say, "I'm proud of you." But they never did. Now, you don't seek applause from anyone. You succeed quietly. You grow silently. You level up privately. You don't announce your progress. You live it. And this is what disturbs them most. They expected you to stay stagnant, while they gave you nothing. They expected you to wait for their validation that would never come. They expected you to remain the same version of yourself, uncertain, eager, dependent. Instead, you rise. Your progress becomes undeniable. Your aura shifts. Your confidence strengthens. Your energy sharpens. You begin to glow in a way that can't be ignored. People start noticing your growth. Your life moves forward without hesitation. And when someone who never valued you sees that, it hits them like a silent strike to the chest. Because you're not just doing better. You're doing better without them. You're not just succeeding. You're succeeding in a direction they can no longer follow. This is where their regret becomes heavier. They realize they had access to your life at its most vulnerable stage, when you needed encouragement, support, and care. They gave you none of that. And now they're watching you become someone they no longer deserve to stand next to. Your quiet success exposes their loud neglect. Your growth exposes their stagnation. Your evolution exposes their pettiness. And the truth they cannot handle is this. They didn't lose someone weak. They lost someone who was becoming powerful. These two attitudes, emotional non-reactivity and silent self-improvement, shatter the last illusions they had about controlling your path. They force the person to face the version of you they tried to keep small. And now, watching you rise without them becomes a punishment they created for themselves. Not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you finally chose to become everything they believed you would never be. That is the kind of regret that doesn't fade. It only grows. The ninth attitude that shakes someone who never valued you is moving on without explanation. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Not as a performance. But as a natural progression of someone who finally understands that their heart deserves a place where it is not treated like an afterthought. There was a time when you believed closure required a conversation, a speech, a confession, a moment of emotional clarity. But you've learned that people who neglect you never listen when you speak. They only start listening when you stop trying. So you don't announce that you're leaving. You don't schedule a final talk. You don't send a message saying, "I'm done." You simply adjust your direction. You quietly walk toward a future that doesn't include them. You let your distance do the talking. And that silence, this quiet, unapologetic departure, reaches them in a way words never could. Because humans take most seriously the things they never saw coming. And losing you without warning is a shock to their system. It forces them to ask questions they never asked while they had you. Why didn't they say anything? Why didn't they fight for this? Why am I realizing their value only now? But the truth is simple. You didn't owe them a warning. They owed you appreciation. And they failed to give it. Moving on without explanation is not cruelty. It is emotional maturity. It is self-respect. It is the moment you accept that some people only understand your value when they feel your absence. And sometimes the most powerful closure is choosing not to give closure at all. The 10th and final attitude, the one that leaves the deepest, most lasting mark, is becoming emotionally self-sufficient. Nothing destabilizes someone who once underestimated you more than realizing you no longer need them. Not for validation. Not for attention. Not for confidence. Not for meaning. For years, they knew exactly how to shake you. They knew how to make you doubt yourself. They knew how to make you chase reassurance. But that version of you no longer exists. You've rebuilt yourself. Piece by piece. Quietly. Slowly. Relentlessly. You've learned to comfort yourself. You've learned to believe in yourself. You've learned to stand alone without collapsing. And that independence radiates from you in ways they cannot ignore. Self-sufficiency is not isolation. It is power, calm, grounded, unshakable power. When they see you thriving without their attention. When they see you at peace without their presence. When they see you choosing yourself rather than choosing their inconsistency. It hits them harder than any anger ever could. Because now, they are not losing the old you. They are losing access to the new you. The stronger you. The wiser you. The version of you who finally understands that love does not require self-betrayal. And that's when their regret changes shape. It's no longer a passing thought. It becomes a burden. A constant reminder that they underestimated someone who was quietly becoming extraordinary. Regret grows strongest when it is too late. When the opportunity has already slipped away. When the person they took for granted no longer looks back. These last two attitudes, leaving without warning and becoming emotionally whole, close a door that can never reopen. They create a finality the other person cannot break. They show them, undeniably, that their absence didn't destroy you. It built you. And the most painful truth for them is this. You didn't become stronger to make them regret it. You became stronger because you finally learned to value yourself. They regret losing you. But you don't regret letting them go. That is the difference. And that difference is what sets you free. If you felt connected to this message, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more, and drop a comment below telling me which attitude resonated with you the most. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today.